I promised a 6-month series talking about CBD, so I'm going to do one video a month over the course of 6 months talking about CBD and how it affects the body and endocannabinoids and our natural production of them. And this is mainly just to combat a lot of the nonsense that's out there. All right, so today I want to talk about pain and inflammation and how CBD affects it, but also how our natural endocannabinoids affect pain and how the modulation of inflammation is really just a natural process that all has to do with cyclooxygenase enzymes and also very specific things called endocannabinoids. So let's talk first about what inflammation really is. I'm going to make this quick. All right, inflammation is simply a response to any kind of trauma or any kind of immune event in your body where your body needs an immune response. Okay, we have two different kinds, acute and chronic. Acute is the kind that you probably know about when you bump your elbow, when you get a scratch or a cut, and it gets swollen. Okay, it gets swollen and red. That's simple inflammation. That's simple cytokine activity triggering immune cells to fight a given trauma. Then we have chronic inflammation. It's the inflammation that's occurring in our body all the time, really. Okay, it's constantly happening. Sometimes it's worse than other times. And this has to do with the fact that our cells become actually sick and we trigger an immune response, and then it cascades into this vicious circle where the immune system responds even more and more and more, yielding to chronic inflammation. Now, normally when we think of fighting inflammation, we think of an anti-inflammatory, or when we talk about anti-inflammatory processes in the body, we think about something known as a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, aspirin, ibuprofen, things like that. And yes, those do combat inflammation, but here's how they actually work. They act upon something known as the cyclooxygenase enzymes, okay, COX1 and COX2. Cyclooxygenase enzymes are a way to actually slow down inflammation, definitely, by inhibiting them. The problem is, as you probably already know, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories are hard on the gut. The reason they're hard on the gut is because they stop the production of both COX1 and COX2. One of those cyclooxygenase enzymes we need to protect our gut. You see, we actually need a little bit of inflammation in our gut. Anyway, I digress. I want to talk more about how CBD directly affects inflammatory responses within the body. So we have these things in our body called endocannabinoids. Okay, they're endogenous cannabinoids. A lot of times when we think of cannabinoids, we think of only something that's coming from cannabis, something that's illegal or something that really is an exogenous thing coming in. The reality is we have endogenous cannabinoids. They're called endocannabinoids, and they have an anti-inflammatory effect on the body. They're a very natural thing, and they're a natural byproduct of fatty acid metabolism, believe it or not. So these endocannabinoids are naturally occurring members of what are called the eicosanoid families. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I talk about eicosapentaenoic acid, also known as EPA. If you've ever bought a fish oil pill or any kind of omega-3, you've seen eicosapentaenoic acid, or EPA, on the label, an anti-inflammatory fat that modulates inflammation and does a multitude of other things within the body. Well, these endocannabinoids are a naturally occurring member of that superfamily. So within that family, we have a lot of different things that modulate inflammation. And in this particular case, endocannabinoids are derived from long-chain fatty acids. They are a byproduct of the breakdown of long-chain fatty acids, meaning it's a very natural process to have cannabinoids in our system. So what ends up happening is they're produced by fat, but then when they're actually needed, when they're actually solicited to be used for something, they're released by the neurons. So we have these fats that are broken down, and we end up with these overall cannabinoids. But they don't get released until the neurons say so. So the neurons actually see some inflammation or they see something, they're going to release more of these to modulate it. So it's this natural progression of fats communicating with neurons to ultimately release these endocannabinoids. So let's take it a little bit further to understand how this works. And now that means we have to understand cytokines. You see, cytokines are signaling proteins that ultimately recruit inflammation to happen. So cytokines will trigger specific immune cells to release inflammation or actually even reduce inflammation when given the right circumstances. Cytokine activity is not always bad. We do need some cytokine activity. If we got rid of all the cytokines, we wouldn't ever have inflammation, or it wouldn't ever be able to be modulated up or down, leaving us in a really sticky situation. So when we get down to CBD, CBD actually modulates the cytokine production. So it works on cytokine production with very specific cells though. So since we don't want to get rid of all the cytokine activity, we do want to get rid of it with specific things. So very specific immune cells that are overactive, that are causing inflammation in our joints all the time or causing inflammation in our brain, they can become reduced with the instance of CBD being in the equation, simply because now we have all the stimulation of these natural endocannabinoids to reduce that inflammation. But there's one specific area of the body that reduces cytokine activity that's exceptionally important, and that's when it comes down to T helper cells. If you've ever heard of T cells before, then you know that there are two kinds. There are helper cells and there are killer cells. The helper cells travel around the body and they slap a label on anything that is potentially bad. That label allows the killer T cells to come by later and designate that to be killed. So basically, it has a label, and now the killer T cell goes ahead and it kills it. So they're working in tandem, kind of a two-part equation here. So what CBD does is it limits the cytokine activity of these helper T cells, meaning they are not as activated in a bad way. If you have overactive T cells, T helper cells, they're going to run around your body, running rampant, slapping a label on everything, triggering inflammation and triggering killer T cells to come around and start an attack on things that don't need to be attacked. So you can see how this can lead to a massive amount of chronic inflammation, leading to joint pain, brain fog, digestive discomfort, all kinds of different things. So to help this get in really, really clear, I'm going to break down one specific kind of endocannabinoid. Now, there are a multitude of them, but this particular one is very common and it's one of the most well-researched. It's called anandamide. Okay? Anandamide is a naturally occurring cannabinoid. It's an endocannabinoid that by using CBD oil, your body naturally creates more of. Remember, I've talked about this in other videos, but CBD does not react with the CBD1 and CBD2 receptors, okay? It does not do that like traditional cannabis would. It's not a recreational drug. What it does is it allows your body to naturally create more of the endocannabinoids that are good. Endocannabinoids like anandamide. Okay, so let's talk about how that actually works. So not only does CBD naturally increase anandamide as is, it also reduces the cytokine activity that would normally inhibit it. So we're talking about the cytokine activity associated with tumor necrosis factor 1 alpha, TNF1A, very, very common in the world of inflammation. By reducing TNF1A, we reduce the body's ability to fight off production of anandamide. And by reducing the activity of tumor necrosis factor 1 alpha, we also reduce the activity of amino hydrolase. This is a byproduct of fatty acid metabolism that can actually have a negative effect on overall endocannabinoid activity. Basically, all this means is by reducing the cytokine activity of these two things, we are allowing endocannabinoids to do their job better, and we are allowing anandamide to come into fruition, and we create more of it. And if you don't know anandamide, it is very much so responsible for creating bliss within the body, reducing inflammation in the joints, but also reducing inflammation in the brain. It truly is known as the bliss product of the body, because that's the sensation that best describes what anandamide does. But in knowing that, we have to wonder, well, how exactly does it do that? Well, it's because it holds the key to be able to turn off nuclear factor kappa B, or at least greatly reduce it. Nuclear factor kappa B is one of the most widely researched inflammatory substances within the body. It is basically the master control switch when it comes down to inflammation. If we can reduce nuclear factor kappa B, we can reduce the actual DNA result of inflammation within our body. You see, if nuclear factor kappa B is always elevated, it can change our DNA to be used to having high amounts of inflammation. So really, anandamide is one of the keys to actually getting rid of this problem where our bodies are getting so accustomed to inflammation that we're just adapting to become these inflamed creatures. So it truly is allowing our body to turn off that master switch when it comes down to inflammation. And mind you, it is doing this all without ever activating CBD1 or CBD2 receptors within the body. I will say that again. It does not affect CBD1 or CBD2 receptors in the body. A lot of marketing collateral out there will tell you that CBD oil does directly affect one of the CBD receptors. Not the case at all. All CBD oils do the same thing. They naturally increase the production of our pre-existing endocannabinoids. Okay? Very, very critical. So I know this was very in-depth. It was talking about cytokines. It was talking about all kinds of inflammatory markers in the body. But it's important that you know that at the end of the day, it is a solid way to modulate and reduce inflammation in the body without acting upon the cyclooxygenase enzymes that are going to destroy your gut and lead to a lot of other damaging things in your life. So as always, if you like these CBD videos, let me know down in the comment sections below. I'm going to make sure I keep them coming to you for the next couple of months so that you have a solid understanding of what truly is going on in the products, but also what's going on in your body, not just in a product that you take. I'll see you in the next video.